Hey folks, we are going to continue our conversation about Elemental Key. Tap Untap Burn, Elemental Key. Available currently at the DMsGuild. Bundled with other Tap Untap Burn products at the DMsGuild for a whopping 33% discount. Grab it all. Color mana, universal spell points, 5 color mana for Eldritch Knights and Arcane Tricksters, core mechanics for all high casting classes. We now have spell point warlocks included in the bundle, the revised 5 color magic spell list, and of course now Tap Untap Burn Elemental Key. So all the books you can read, 100% free preview to see if there's something that you're excited about, and if it is, please purchase to help encourage more artwork and more of these mana projects in the future. So as promised, we're going to be doing a set of this and the next 8 videos after it. We're going to be looking at the optional class features that are created by by the new Tap Untap Burn options. And so we're just going to deal here with the first page, which is the monk progression table, the proficiencies, as well as the modified martial arts, which is now Art of Battle. So starting with the proficiencies, we are granting the monk light and medium armor proficiencies, not shield, not heavy, similar to the barbarian. It's more of a skirmisher build. This is how they're looked at, as a fast strike, jump in, jump out sort of half casting gish magus type class. So they're going to get the light and medium armor, and some of their abilities will work with it, some of it won't, but it's an option for you to be able to actually take advantage of magical equipment and not have to lean so heavy on dex, strength, wisdom, and constitution to have a good skirmishing fighter. So some quality of life improvement there. Weapons, we see, again, expanding the idea of this being a half-casting martial class and not whatever it is that they thought it was supposed to be when they made it. We're getting all simple weapons and martial weapon proficiencies, so this is going to open up a ton of fun flavor options. It's going to put a lot less weight on the Kinsei when we get around to building that as well. And of course, it's going to allow you to lean into having gear that you can just pick up and use effectively like a good general fighter should. Beyond that, you're getting 2 tools, which can be any kind of painting supplies, sculptor tools, or musical instruments, just putting a little art in your martial. Beyond that, the saving throws, dexterity, wisdom, no change there. And then skills, pick 3: acrobatics, athletics, history, insight, perception, persuasion, and stealth. This is just quality improvement. Having skills is super useful, and these things are going to help you lean into doing something other than fighting as for your social and exploration challenges. Monk progression table. This is going to be an improvement over what you see in the player's handbook. The scaling for both increased movement as well as martial arts dies are upscaling with your casting level improvement. So you start with D4s and then 10-foot movement speed. And then once you get to second level, max key limit of 2, we're switching to a D6 and 15 feet movement. Once you get to 9th level with third spell access, you'll have a D8 and 20-foot movement. At 13, when you get to 4th level casting, you'll get a D10 and 25 feet movement. And then in 5th tier, at the top end of the game, you're going to have, at 17th level, you're going to have a D12 and 30-foot movement. So, hey, Bot, glad you could come and ping my bit. So, I'm just going to speak for Bot. Thanks, Bot, for asking that question. The question is, Phil, what's up with the D12? That's a lot of damage. So, in the playtest, it started off with a D6. And there's been a lot of channels, Trent Monk included, and others that have spoken to how the damage of the monk falls off at the later half of the game. And although a lot of tables don't ever actually see anything past 10th, I regularly do, and I will agree that the monk needs a leg up. Interesting, though, is that with this subclass, the Way of the 5 Elements in particular, we were speaking initially about elemental smite not competing directly with the paladin for smite damage, but now we're seeing that with a D12, you can do a maximum of, let's look at this again. When you hit a creature with an unarmed or melee weapon attack, and we now know those melee weapons can be using these optional rules, these additional optional rules, they could be anything up to and including a halberd. You can burn ki up to your max ki limit, which at 17th level is going to be 5, to deal additional damage equal to the total result rolled for a number of martial arts dice equal to the ki burned this way. So we know that at 17th level you can burn 5 ki to do 5d12 damage, which is going to be up to 60 damage. Compare that to the paladin, which is going to have up to 5 dice, plus it gets 5 d8s, plus it gets the extra d8 automatically when you use smite in general, and then at 11th level it also gets the additional just flat d8 radiant damage you add to any attack, whether it's smite or not, which is going to be 7 d8 damage, which is going to cap out at 56 damage. Now, so you're going to say, we were talking about not competing with the paladin during smites. So, interesting thing though is that the paladin gets 40 levels worth of casting ability, and it has things like banishing smite that do 40-10 damage, as well as you can then add smite on top of it. So if you're looking to, you can't ever outburn a paladin when a paladin wants to kill something. And this is all, this is going to allow, by the time you get to, let's see, at 9th level, you're doing 3d8, and at 11th level, you're still doing 3d8, but the paladin is doing 5d8. At 13th level, the paladin is doing 6d8, which is up to 48 damage, and you're doing at best 4d10, which is 40 damage. Only at the 17th level, at the final tier, are you even potentially competing with the paladin. But even still, you're rolling 4d12s as opposed to 7d8. So your damage is going to be a lot more spiky with the monk than reliable smite damage with the paladin. So it is comparable damage, but you have to get all the way up to the last levels of the game to actually have that competitiveness. But prior to that, the paladin is always stronger. So most people of game are going to see gameplay between 1st and 10th level, or potentially 11th level, where the paladin is going to far outshine what the monk can do. So this is competitive, but it doesn't actually outperform the monk, the paladin. And then, of course, increased movement. It still gets the 30-foot speed, but it just scales more slowly over more levels. So you're still having that same end result, but it just scales out as your character gains higher spell levels. You're gaining higher movement speeds. Let's see. So that's the mana progression table. Again, these are optional. If you want to keep the the monk progression table that's in the player's handbook, doesn't damage anything in the game here. I believe that this is just a better progression for the monk overall and gives it that leg up that it needs. And again, if you think that smite damage is too strong in the earlier class feature, you can either get rid of it or you can keep the monk progression table from the player's handbook. But this is fine. First level, Art of Battle. This is going to replace martial arts. This is going to be a severe quality of life improvement for the martial art, for the monk in general. A lot of depictions about the monk is that it is a sword war. It's a combat warrior. And I depict it as, like I've said in the prior segments, that it is a martial half-casting character, which should have access to martial weapons, just like all the other classes do. So let's look at some of the changes that we see having come through here. Right off the bat, you can use your wisdom modifier for attack and damage rolls with unarmed strikes and any weapons you're proficient with. So you could be opting between strength, dexterity for light weapons or for ranged weapons under normal circumstances, but you also have to worry about having wisdom put into a class that is heavily dependent on its key usage and has a very limited key battery in comparison to other half casters. So giving it the wisdom modifier as an option to use for attacks and damage is a great improvement of life, especially if you are dealing with a limited stat rolling, or if the standard stat array is forcing you to make too many selections between too many useful ability scores. This makes you just a little less mad. Let's see. You can roll a d4 in place of normal damage of your unarmed strike or any weapon you're proficient with. Not just martial arts weapons, but any weapon you're proficient with. And this die changes, as you can see, on the martial arts die column of the monk progression table, as we discussed, scaling from d4 to d12. Whenever you hit with an unarmed attack, you can choose. This is fun. Whenever you hit with an unarmed attack, you can choose to deal bludgeon, piercing, or slashing damage. I don't know if you've explored a lot of different type of strikes in the various martial arts, but bludgeoning fists is just pretty straightforward. Bludgeoning. There's also piercing, classic poking out people's eyes, stabbing between people's ribs, chiseling at people's trachea. There's a lot of piercing type strikes that are depicted in all sorts of forms of media that appear there. And then slashing damage is more like the claw effects, where you'll see people cutting each other with claws, with their thumbnails, fingernails. If you're dealing with a more aggressive creature, like say you are a dragonborn, and you've got or like a shifter, or an owlin, or catfolk that all have fangs, beaks, and claws, it makes sense that you'd be able to do slashing damage. I've personally been cut on many occasions by people taking out chunks of my flesh with their own fingernails, and schoolyard fights that were pretty nasty. I've been bitten in the past, which can seem like piercing damage, but if they just wriggle their head around a little bit, it becomes slashing damage, and unarmed strikes don't specify what you are using to make your strikes with. So it's perfectly sensible that you might clamp onto somebody's ear and bite it. So, yeah, but what this really does is it lets you open up feats that read like slasher feats, piercing feats, the bludgeoning feats. Basically, any of the type of weapon feats that rely on types of damage become much more readily available to you, even if you just want to use unarmed strikes. So again, it's a quality of improvement. Having access to weapons for magical and different bonus effects is great. Being able to stay on narrative with the unarmed damage, but being able to perform at the same level statistically with the feats and abilities that are in the game, it's just a quality of life improvement. Your unarmed attacks are considered to be weapons worth at least 1 silver piece that possess the finesse and light weapon properties for use with spells, feats, and features requiring these prerequisites. There are spells that you would want to be able to cast, say Booming Blade, Green Flame Blade. They require you to use a weapon that costs at least 1 silver piece to do so. And there's been many conversations about, wouldn't it be great if you could choose to use Booming Blade as an attack action as a monk? Now, I mean, they have Flurry of Blows, which makes it questionable how they're actually going to want to use their action each round. But staying in flavor with our second conversation about adding cantrips to this as a half-casting class, it makes perfect sense that they would also have those martial cantrips available to them too. They're really valuable at low levels, and so making them available would make a lot of sense. And we see here in the last feature that you add Green Flame Blade, Booming Strike, and as well as at 17th level Steel Wind Strike. We'll talk about that in a second. But the next bullet point is actually when you use the attack action on your turn, similar to in the player's handbook, you can make an attack with an unarmed strike or a light weapon that you're holding and proficient with as a bonus action, assuming you haven't already used a bonus action this turn. It's the same action economy that you expect from the DM, from the player's handbook, but it's leaning into the fact that you're using weapons. But it's emphasizing speedy strikes, which is the trope that they're trying to maintain with flurry of blows and this bonus action ability. So it's limited to light weapons only. Your weapons, of course, count as light weapons and finesse weapons for things like dual weapon wielding. You could technically use your unarmed attacks to qualify for those things. Like if you're using if you have a single dagger on you, and you wanted to use, for whatever reason, you want to use the duelist feats, you could use your martial arts to qualify for doing those dual attacks. And then again, looking again here, you are permanently adding green flame, the green flame and booming strike, and to your prepared disciplines. As well as the 17th level, add the Steel Wind Strike discipline. These don't count against the total number of disciplines that you can prepare, so these are always on your list. By 17th level, you have access to 5th level Steel Wind Strike. It's whirlwind attack, and of all the classes that exist inside the game, the monk is the one that is most appropriate to have access to a whirlwind attack, and we're going to explore that later in another section. But yeah, these are those cantrips that we were talking about, and they are Strike of the Green Flame, as well as Booming Strike, which of course are Green Flame Blade and Booming Blade. We can see here that the Strike of the Green Flame is a fire attack, so it's fire damage. It's a fire elemental, or it's the color red, and it's an instant spell, so it's not like you have to tap any key. That's just flavor. But again, if we're talking about using a magic paradigm of color or elements, the description is important. So you want to have that available to you, especially if you're using color, where colors are overseeing multiple elements. Like, for example, the Booming Strike deals thunder damage. So again, it could be depicted as blue, red, or green energy, as it is in the elements depicted as air and earth. So that, again, just leans into the flavor of you're always able to deal thunder damage. You're always able to deal fire damage. You're always able to, the Steel Wind Strike at 17th level is a 5th level spell, so it costs 5 key to cast it. It's depicted in the elemental paradigm as an air spell, and in the color mana paradigm, it's blue or green. So that's it for this section. Just looking at the art of battle. Again, you can look at the entire book on the DMsGuild, and you're most certainly welcome to do so. If you don't like anything you have here, we've heard all the arguments on various channels before about how underpowered the monk is and how these type of additions are good improvements of quality of life. But I certainly welcome debate, so certainly be welcome to include your comments below. And we're going to pick up here again in a few minutes to look at the next features, Art of Defense, and we'll catch up with you in just a second. So, yeah, thank you so much.